Her true story, from California. My son texted, "You won't be joining us. My wife prefers to keep it only her family." After I paid for the whole vacation, so I froze the travel fund before takeoff. They boarded the plane. The card didn't. "You should understand your place. My wife prefers to keep the vacation just for her family. You've already done your part by paying." That was the text my son sent me at exactly 11:02 p.m. 2 nights before the family trip I had been planning, funding, and dreaming about for 3 years. I sat at the kitchen table, my reading glasses perched on the tip of my nose, the soft hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the house. I had just finished placing the last set of travel-sized sunscreen bottles into the zippered bags I had labeled by hand, one for each grandchild. My hands were still sticky with tape from wrapping little souvenir bags with keychains that said "Aloha" and "Grandma loves you." The phone buzzed again. Another message. "Don't take it the wrong way, Mom. It's not personal. It's just simpler this way." I did not reply. I stared at the glowing screen until it went dark. Then I placed it face down on the table. He didn't call. He didn't say thank you. He didn't even bother to lie with kindness. Just a cold, quiet reshuffling of family, where the woman who raised him had become, in his words, not part of her family. I had known things were changing. It wasn't just the way Tanya, my daughter-in-law, corrected me in front of the kids, or the way she rolled her eyes when I told stories from when my husband and I first visited Hawaii on our honeymoon. It wasn't even how she started hosting holidays at her mother's house and forgot to mention it until the day before. No, what told me everything I needed to know was the way she had looked past me. Not through me, but past me, like a waitress at a restaurant that had already dropped off the check. Still, I never thought Nathan would go along with it. He had once written me Mother's Day cards that made me cry. He used to bring me pink tulips every March, even when he moved out of state. When he was a boy, he told his teachers I was his best friend. I kept the picture he drew in 2nd grade, the one where I had a cape and the caption said, "My mom saves the day." Apparently, I was no longer part of that story. I looked at the small duffel bag I had packed for myself. Inside were 2 sundresses I hadn't worn in years, a photo of my late husband I planned to place on the dinner table during our night at the beach, and a small box of matches for the candle I wanted us all to light in his memory. The candle was lavender, his favorite scent. I had imagined us standing on the sand, barefoot, as the sun dipped into the ocean. I imagined my grandson holding my hand, asking, "Did Grandpa love the beach too?" And I would say he loved it enough to bring me here before we could afford it. He loved it more because he shared it with me. But that wouldn't happen now, because I wasn't invited. I had paid for the beachfront villa. I had booked the flights. I had organized the airport transfers, the luau tickets, the snorkeling lessons, the breakfast baskets. I had spent hours on the phone with a travel agent, making sure the beds were soft enough for the kids, the walkways flat enough for Tanya's mother's bad knee. And now I was a line item that had been crossed off, the ATM that wired the funds and then quietly disappeared. I sat in the kitchen a long while. The clock ticked toward midnight. The house was dark around me, but I didn't turn on the light. I let the dim glow of the under-cabinet bulbs cast long shadows over the counters I had scrubbed earlier that evening. For a moment, I felt shame. Not anger, not even sadness, just shame. The quiet, aching kind that makes you feel like a fool for hoping. I thought about calling him. I even picked up the phone. But what would I say? "That hurts?" He knew that. "You've changed?" Of course he had. "Please let me come." I couldn't beg. Not after all I had given. I set the phone back down. Instead, I got up, walked slowly to my desk in the den, and turned on my old laptop. The screen blinked awake, sluggish but familiar. I clicked open the folder labeled Hawaii Travel Fund. There it was, the total I had been building toward since the day I retired, $21,763.84. It had started with $10 bills tucked away in envelopes. Then I began selling old furniture, then tutoring English online at night. Every dollar had gone into this trip. I had set up a travel fund account, linked the payments for the villa, the airline tickets, the services. I had also set up all the cards to pull from one primary source, mine, because I trusted them, because I thought trust was something I had earned. The cursor blinked. I hovered over the button that said, Freeze Account. A simple click would pause all payments. A phone call to the travel agency would halt everything. I didn't click, not yet. Instead, I opened a blank document and I started typing something else. Not a response to Nathan, not a plea. A list. A new list. Of names. Women from the church who hadn't left the state in 20 years. My friend Carol, whose son hadn't spoken to her since she got cancer. Louise, who buried her husband last fall and still brought his photo to Bible study. Frances, who helped raise her grandkids but wasn't invited to their graduations. Beverly, who told me last month that no one had ever taken a picture of her on the beach. I saved the file. Then I went back to the bank page. I clicked freeze. A small box popped up. Are you sure you want to pause all linked transactions? I clicked yes. Another message. All linked cards will be disabled immediately. Yes. Then I sat back, closed the laptop, and took a deep breath. I picked up the souvenir bag I had made for my youngest grandson. I took out the keychain and placed it on the table. Then I unwrapped the others, one by one. And for the first time in 3 years, I let myself imagine a different kind of trip. One where I was not unwanted, not a burden, not a footnote, but a host. And I smiled. Not out of revenge, but out of something stronger. Clarity. It started with a jar. An old mason jar I kept behind the flower in the kitchen cabinet. I called it the dream jar, though nobody knew that but me. Every time I skipped buying something small, a bottle of vitamins, a movie rental, a new pair of house shoes, I'd take that money, in cash, and slip it into the jar. It wasn't much at first. $5 here, the welk there, but over time it grew, quietly, like hope tends to do. 3 years I saved. I canceled my cable. I stopped buying my favorite tea. I tutored students online for extra income, even when my joints ached and my eyes burned. I turned the heat down at night and wore double socks. I declined invitations to lunch, telling friends I had a tight month. They didn't know I was putting every dime into that jar. For what? For a memory. For one last beautiful moment as a family. Hawaii wasn't just a destination, it was a symbol. James and I had gone there for our honeymoon. We were just 24, barely married, broke as could be. We shared a single suitcase and split sandwiches at lunchtime. He got sunburned so badly on the second day, he wore a bedsheet like a cape for the rest of the week. We laughed more than we ever would again. After he died, I made a quiet promise to myself. I'd take the family there. I'd let the grandkids see what he saw. Let Nathan feel the sand his father once walked. Maybe it would reconnect us. Maybe it would remind him of where he came from, of who loved him first. So I planned. I researched villas that could house all 9 of us. I called the travel agent a dozen times to ask about bed arrangements, dietary needs, and wheelchair access for Tanya's mother. I ordered custom t-shirts with everyone's name and the words, "Family is Forever, 2023, printed across the front. I chose a beachfront home with a fire pit. I imagined us sitting around it, lighting candles, one by one, each of us saying a word to describe James. I would bring his photo, the one of him laughing with his head thrown back, sun in his hair, and I'd hold it while we all said something good. I imagined silence, then tears, then laughter, but mostly I imagined being seen, being thanked, being held. None of that happened. Because somewhere along the way, I stopped being part of the picture. I don't mean just the metaphorical one, I mean literally. I noticed it slowly. Fewer group photos. When they posed at Thanksgiving, Tanya would say, "Let's do one of just the kids." Then, "Let's do one with just our family unit." And by the time they were done, there wasn't time for one with me. At Christmas, they all wore matching sweaters, red with white trees. Mine was blue. I didn't even know there was a plan. Nathan would brush it off. "Oh, you're not into that stuff, Mom." But I was. I just wasn't asked. Tanya took over birthdays. She hosted everything at her mother's place. I was invited, but I felt like a guest. Once, she told someone, "Nathan's mom is here too," as if I'd wandered in uninvited. And always, she smiled like she didn't mean harm. But harm doesn't always come with raised voices. Sometimes it comes with exclusion, with omission, with being the one left out of every photo, every story, every seat at the table. But still, I planned. I held on, because this trip was going to bring us back together. Because once we were all under that Hawaiian sky, with waves whispering against the shore and children squealing in the sand. Maybe love would be enough to remind them. That was the story I told myself. That was the dream I built out of sacrifices, small and silent, until that text, that single text that turned a 3-year dream into a 3-second dismissal. You've already done your part by paying. Suddenly, every skipped tea, every cold night, every tutoring hour spent squinting at a screen felt foolish. I hadn't been building a bridge. I'd been building a pedestal, one they never planned to visit. I thought of the candles I'd packed, of the moment I imagined us holding hands by the fire. But the truth hit me like a wave breaking sharp against rock. They didn't want my stories. They didn't want my memories. They just wanted my money. And now that they had it, they wanted me to disappear. That night I went to the closet and unpacked my bag. I set the lavender candle on the table beside James's photo. Then I sat in the quiet and asked myself something no mother should ever have to ask. When did I become a burden in the family I'd built? The morning after the text, I woke up earlier than usual. Not because I had anywhere to be, but because I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing his words in my head. Not even his voice, just the words. Cold, typed, delivered through a screen. You've already done your part by paying. I moved through the house like a ghost, folding the same blanket twice, straightening picture frames that were already straight, wiping the kitchen counter though it was spotless. The silence clung to me. It hummed in the walls. Later that afternoon, I opened my email to check a grocery receipt, and that was when I saw it. Subject, Final Itinerary, Hawaii Family. Passage, sent from the travel agency. I clicked it without thinking. A full breakdown of flight schedules, villa check-in times, excursions, dinner reservations, rental car pickups, everything I had worked so hard to organize. I scrolled slowly, eyes scanning for confirmation of what I already suspected but hadn't wanted to face. There were 8 names. Nathan, Tanya, their 2 kids, Tanya's parents, Tanya's sister's boyfriend, not mine, not Mom, not Marilyn, not anywhere. 8 plane tickets, 8 lay greeting passes, 8 guests registered at the villa. I was not one of them. I stared at the screen, my hand hovering over the mouse. Then I zoomed in. Maybe there had been a mistake. Maybe I was under guest 9. Maybe they'd added me separately. Maybe, but there were no other attachments, no side bookings, no separate confirmation, just 8. I sat there for a long moment. Then I closed the laptop gently, like it might break if I moved too fast. That evening, Tanya called. Not Nathan, Tanya. Her voice was overly cheerful. We're just wrapping up packing, she chirped. I hope everything's set on your end money-wise. I think the final payment hits tomorrow, right? I didn't answer right away. Then I asked softly, Is there anything you need me to bring? A pause, a sharp, awkward silence. Bring, she echoed. Oh, no, you don't need to bring anything, I pushed gently. Just wondering if I should pack any games for the kids or snacks for the flight. I know sometimes they get motion sick. She cut me off, still smiling, but with steel in her voice now. Marilyn, we've got it all handled. You really don't need to worry. In fact, we were thinking it might be best if you took this trip to rest. Stay home, focus on you. She didn't say it with malice, but the finality was there. They had planned the whole thing with me excluded, and were now pretending it was for my own good. After the call ended, I stood in my kitchen, staring out the window at the bird bath James had installed 20 years ago. The water was still, not a ripple, just like me, not angry, not shocked, just still. I walked to the closet, pulled down the small fireproof lockbox, and opened it. Inside were the documents I'd kept since opening the travel fund, the account I created, the account I funded, the account linked to every single booking. I flipped through the forms. There it was in bold letters, account holder Marilyn Rose Monroe, authorized users none, no co-signers, no shared ownership, no alternate access. I sat down and opened my banking app. There it was. Travel fund, $21,763.84. Status, active, linked cards. 6 primary billing owner, me. That's when I started thinking about how easily they had erased me, how confidently, how they had spent my generosity like it was their right, and discarded my presence like it was a burden. I was never meant to go. They just needed the money. It had never been our vacation. It was a transaction. and I had been the bank. But the thing about banks is, they can close. I did not make any decisions that night. Instead, I turned off the phone, made myself a cup of peppermint tea, and sat with it. I let myself feel it fully, not just the insult, but the clarity. They did not forget me, they omitted me. And worse, they assumed I would be too passive, too old, too grateful for crumbs to notice. They thought I'd stay in the shadows and smile anyway. They forgot who raised them. I closed the app, and for the first time in months I slept through the night. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone to announce what I'd discovered. No dramatic phone calls, no explosive accusations. I simply made tea, sat in the chair James used to call the lookout, and stared out the window while my laptop blinked awake beside me. The house was still. No TV, no radio, just the wind tapping against the pane, and the occasional hum of the fridge. And in that silence, something inside me settled, not like calm, but like stone. I was no longer confused. I was no longer waiting for an apology. I was planning. I opened the banking application and scrolled to the travel fund section. My name was still at the top, account owner. I checked the linked cards, 6 in total. 1 for the resort, 1 for the car rental company, 1 for the airline, 3 for incidentals, food, excursions, entertainment, all set to auto-draw from the same source, my fund. I clicked the Settings tab. There it was, Transaction Lock Freeze Mode. I hovered over the toggle. A small note beneath it read, "Activate this setting to pause all outgoing charges from this account. Linked cards will be disabled. No new charges can be authorized without account owner verification." 1 click. That was all it would take. But I didn't click it yet. Instead, I opened another tab, the one for my calendar. I marked the departure day with a red circle. They were scheduled to leave LAX at 10:45 IEM, local time. If they arrived 2 hours early for check-in, that meant I'd want the freeze to begin at around 8:15 IEM, just as they queued up at the gate, confident everything had been paid for. That would be the moment the cards stopped working. But only if I told them not to. Only if I held the silence long enough. Still, I didn't press the button, not yet, because once you decide to stop playing the role people assign you, the good mother, the generous grandmother, the smiling supporter who never asks for anything back, there's no returning to that mask, and I wanted to be sure. So I gave them one last chance. Just one. I sent a message to Nathan, simple, soft. Me. Let me know if you'd like any help with the kids' bags or snacks before the trip. I can bring some extra motion sickness bands for Olivia. No reply. An hour passed. 2. I could see that the message had been read. Still nothing. No thank you. No acknowledgement. No we appreciate you. Just nothing. That's when I knew. There was no misunderstanding. This wasn't about miscommunication or forgetfulness or Tanya's preferences. This was about entitlement. About the quiet cruelty of people who think love is a one-way transaction. I was the vault, and they were cashing out. But not anymore. I returned to the banking app. My finger hovered again. Then, without hesitation, I clicked. The icon turned blue. The message updated. Freeze mode activated. All transactions are now paused. Manual authorization required to resume. Done. I stared at the screen for a moment, letting it sink in. There would be no confirmation email sent to them, no alert, no warning. They would find out the way I found out I wasn't invited, in the most silent, undeniable way possible. I leaned back in my chair, took a sip of tea and exhaled. It was not revenge. It was reality. A reality they chose. But that did not mean I had to fund it. Over the next 48 hours, I said nothing. When Tanya posted a photo of matching beach hats on social media, I didn't comment. When Nathan texted the family group chat a final, ready for takeoff message, I didn't respond. And when my youngest granddaughter sent me a voice note saying, "Grandma, we're going to see sea turtles," I saved it, pressed it to my heart, and said aloud, "I'm sorry, baby, but someone had to teach your parents the value of presents." Then I returned to my laptop and opened a new spreadsheet. This time, it wasn't for them. It was for me. I made a list titled, "Those Who Deserve to Be Seen." At the top, I wrote, Carol, Beverly, Louise, Frances, Nora, Denise, each one a woman like me, overlooked, underestimated, overused. and beneath each name I began mapping what a vacation could look like, not for reward, but for restoration, not out of pity, but out of power, because if I was going to be the one holding the checkbook, I would decide who was worth the trip. That night I slept with the window open. The wind whispered, like a secret finally spoken. They had their bags packed. They had their boarding passes printed. They thought the only thing left was the flight. But the flight runs on more than fuel. It runs on trust. And they had none left with me. They left for the airport with matching luggage, straw hats, and that soft, smug air people wear when they think everything has gone exactly according to their plan. Tanya posted a photo on Instagram from the backseat of the Uber, the kids grinning, Nathan making a peace sign, her own caption reading, "Off to paradise, family only," the last part cut like glass. I saw it while sitting at my kitchen table, sipping coffee from a chipped mug I had owned since before Nathan was born. The same mug he once made me breakfast in bed with when he was 9 years old. I did not like what I felt, but I did not look away. I watched their story unfold, frame by frame. At the airport, at check-in, at the gate, luggage stacked, kids jumping. Tanya's mother posed beside the airline sign like it was a red carpet. 8 smiles, no seat for me. Then the message came in.